So I was looking at the Mass Effect 5 teases the other day and realized it's perfectly set up to bring Shepard back for one more story. And the weird part is, it's set up a little too perfectly, with a deliberate pattern of each major tease connecting to Shepard. If you've watched any video on this channel, you'll know that the evidence in the teases for Shepard's return is pretty overwhelming. Liara picking up this N7 insignia and giving it a fond brush, the N7 reflection on the relay footage which matches the very first scene we see Shepard's N7 reflection, and the countless teases by the executive producer for the next Mass Effect, Mike Gamble, saying things like, "What about S?" and "Who's Shepard?" I've covered before how all these teases mean that Shepard is likely returning in Mass Effect 5. But this new pattern in the Krogan, Cerberus, New N7, and Geth teases are incredibly deliberate, which I think is setting up a franchise-altering plan for Shepard that also brings Mass Effect into a sustainable future. And the pattern that alters Shepard's role in the next game can be seen in this Krogan Civil War tease. In other videos, I've established how this scene is likely taking place on Tuchanka. The architecture and tank over here match what we've seen on the Krogan homeworld in Mass Effect 2. And even the Varen over here is an omnivore originally native to Tuchanka. So I think it's safe to say this Civil War is taking place in the Milky Way on Tuchanka. I've also covered before how the Executioner pistol here is a weapon with the same design as in Mass Effect 3. So this is most likely a civil war taking place shortly after the Reaper War, since the weapon's design hasn't drastically changed. And if there's no large time jump, then this civil war on Tuchanka is taking place relatively soon after Shepard's actions with the Genophage, which is the beginning of the deliberate pattern found in all the teases I'll go over in a bit. In order to understand this pattern, we have to look at the last major event on Tuchanka, which was, of course, whether the Genophage was cured. This major event in history heavily influenced the Krogan, and it was Commander Shepard who decided their fate. With Shepard's help or interference, Krogan history was forever altered by their actions, which has led to the next phase in Krogan history, either being very populous or in danger of dying out. And both those scenarios make sense with what we're seeing now in the Krogan Civil War tease. Either the fertile Krogan will threaten the galaxy with their vast population, or they're worse off than before, likely making them dangerous as they have nothing left to lose. So the full pattern in this tease and the next ones as well looks like this. When a major historical problem occurred in the trilogy, Shepard solved it, resulting in historical change. And then the results of Shepard's actions created a new historical event, which, as we're now seeing, has led to a major historical problem. What this pattern is showing us is that instead of the Krogan's history moving in a straight line, the pattern of their history actually goes like this. It's more like a circle, where step 4 leads into step 1 in a constantly repeating cycle. Essentially, what Mass Effect 5 is promoting with this tease is a pattern where history repeats itself. The Krogan were suffering through a major problem during Shepard's time, and they are now going through a major problem again. And I believe with all the previous Shepard teases we've gone over, Mass Effect 5 has already hinted at step 2 of this pattern repeating as well. The next game is likely bringing Shepard back to once again solve the major historical problem being presented. Before jumping into why this is likely an intentional pattern for Shepard's new role, we'll first go over how this pattern has shown up in 2 other teases as well, which we can see in the many Cerberus teases like this one here. It's pretty hard to pick out, but I believe that this is showing us the logo of Cerberus, which means that Cerberus will likely be making an appearance in the next Mass Effect, backed up again by the Cerberus colored relay here. I've gone over in previous videos how this relay text showing SA means that the relay is under the control of the Systems Alliance. And due to a bit of sneaky lore in the book Mass Effect Initiation, it was revealed that the Systems Alliance is marching to the tune of an invisible conductor. Due to this reveal, and other lore connected to Mass Effect Andromeda, I strongly believe that Cerberus is secretly controlling the Alliance, which once again matches the pattern from earlier. In the trilogy, Cerberus made a bid to be the voice of humanity under the Elusive Man's rule, and as we know from the games, Cerberus was an anti-alien, humanity-first organization, so them representing humanity would have been really bad. This bid for power by Cerberus matches step 1, where they created a major historical problem in the trilogy. And the solution to this problem also followed step 2. Shepard stepped in and took out Henry Lawson and the Elusive Man. This effectively cut off Cerberus's main leadership group, handing them a major organizational blow. This resulted in step 3, a historical change within Cerberus because they no longer had the power they once did, leading to step 4 of Cerberus no longer working as openly as they did before. Except now, in Mass Effect 5, we're seeing a new historical problem as a result. Cerberus obviously hasn't fully died, and they've likely now infiltrated the very alliance Shepard once was a part of. The very idea of Cerberus's revival in Mass Effect 5 shows that this pattern of history repeating itself is intentionally being used. As the Elusive Man said, Cerberus isn't an organization, it's an idea, and even if leaders are eliminated, the idea of Cerberus will live on. And if all the Shepard teases are legit, then potentially they're returning to once again stop this version of Cerberus too. However, it's fairly obvious that if this happens, that the vicious cycle of history repeating itself will continue. Which to me means that this repetitive pattern is very intentional by the Mass Effect team in order to make a point about why Shepard will return in Mass Effect 5. And to hammer home that this repetitive pattern is very intentional, Mass Effect 5 is likely also teasing us with a third problem that would make Shepard the best one for the job, which is of course the identity of this new N7. Back on N7 Day 2023, we saw this second clip of the N7 that shook the fanbase to its core because it looked like Shepard's return was finally being revealed. The armor on the back here matches the exact same armor Shepard wore in the trilogy, and we had just seen N7-esque colored shoes, so the hype level was through the roof on Shepard being revealed in the third and final clip. However, the final clip didn't show us Shepard. It showed us Cerberus's attempt at recreating Shepard instead. I've gone over this theory in so many videos before, I've honestly lost track, so I'll keep this explanation relatively brief. The second clip of the new N7's reveal was clearly meant to make us think this N7 was Shepard. And on N7 Day 2024, we also got a major clue connecting this N7 to our commander as well, through the Dragon Age The Veilguard crossover event. During the event, we received the same coat worn by the new N7, along with this note by Lace Harding. In the note, she says that someone shepherded it to our doorstep, and that the armor looks familiar, like something an old friend would wear. And since Harding was voiced by the same voice actress as Liara, this is implying that the coat itself would be worn by one of Liara's friends. And the only N7 Liara was close friends with was, of course, Shepard. So with all of these teases pointing to the new N7 being Shepard, I think it's safe to say that this N7 is Shepard, but with a very specific catch, which we can hear for ourselves with the new N7's musical reveal. Right when we see the N7's helmet, really evil music kicks in, which to me means that instead of this N7 being our Shepard, this N7 is likely an evil Shepard, not our original commander. Since the N7 program is a part of the system's alliance, but that same alliance looks to be secretly controlled by Cerberus, then this evil Shepard walking around makes sense. Cerberus has likely made a second Shepard to do its bidding. I'll leave aside whether it's an evil clone or Shepard in AI form for now, because that's not the point of this video. The real point is how this being an evil version of Shepard relates to the deliberate pattern we've seen before. In the Citadel DLC, Cerberus had created a second Shepard clone for backup organs, which then went rogue and tried to steal our commander's identity. But luckily, Shepard thwarted the attempt, resulting in the clone's death. This prevented Shepard's identity from being taken advantage of, along with the demise of those involved. But now, history is repeating itself again. A different version of Shepard has appeared, which once again sets up our commander as the perfect one to take them down. This historical pattern is very clearly intentional in order to have our Shepard return. Except, as I'm sure you've noticed, there's a huge problem with this. If our Shepard does return, what difference will their actions make? Even if they solve this problem, it'll inevitably result in a new one later down the line, resulting in the vicious cycle again. But because this pattern has cropped up so many times throughout the teases, I think the Mass Effect team intentionally put it there for us to notice. What we're seeing has the potential to be worrying, since Shepard's return is looking like a rehashing of the exact same storylines as before. However, there's been a couple major teases that don't involve Shepard, which I believe shows us how Shepard will break this repetitive pattern in the next Mass Effect. And those major teases have all involved the Geth. The very first tease we saw about the Geth was this megastructure that Legion described to Shepard in Mass Effect 2. And as Legion said back then, with this Dyson Sphere-like creation, all Geth would be unified, and all perspectives fully shared with one another. Very crucially, the creation of this megastructure was not affected by Shepard's actions, making it the first major tease unaffected by Shepard's influence. And the second Geth tease follows this too. This Geth crater matches a panel in the Mass Effect comic titled Discovery, which featured a group of heretical Geth. These heretics managed to put together 3 mass relays, creating a telescope that let them see faraway distances in real time, which once again is a tease completely unrelated to Shepard, and so doesn't involve the pattern from earlier. And the final Geth tease is where we see a Geth, for the first time, wearing some very fancy clothes. When a fan theorized about this part of the illustration, showing Liara and her Geth bodyguard, Gamble had liked that tweet. So once again, this is likely showing us something that Shepard has no connection to. We aren't aware about Liara knowing a clothes-wearing Geth in the trilogy, and yet it seems very important, considering we also hear her talking to one here.
Exactly. The Council will be furious. Although they should know by now not to underestimate things in different lands.
So even though there's been plenty of teases involving Shepard and why their return is almost essential, there's been a number of teases unrelated to Shepard that seem just as important too. New historical events, like the Geth deciding to wear clothes, are possible without Shepard's involvement. And this is the key to what I believe Shepard's role will transform into. Our commander can't keep being involved in every major event in the Milky Way. That'll result in the same type of problems cropping up, which doesn't push Mass Effect's narrative forward in any way. So instead, I think Shepard's new role in Mass Effect 5 will be to solve this repetitive historical pattern themselves by solving Mass Effect's biggest problem, which Garrus himself subtly hinted at during the Reaper War.
Peace between the Geth and Quarians.
Who would have thought?
Not how I ever imagined that would turn out. And next you'll be telling me the Krogan and Turians are cooperating. Oh, right. You managed that one too. You're a peacemaker, Shepard. A rare thing these days.
In this conversation, Garrus is subtly expressing Mass Effect's biggest problem. As per former senior cinematic designer John Ebinger, something like 92% of Mass Effect players were Paragon, which means that for a lot of us, Shepard accomplishes incredible peacemaking feats that no one else could have managed. Resolution between the Geth and Quarians, and between the Turians and Krogan, like Garrus said. But these same incredible feats also created a problem for the subsequent protagonists in Mass Effect. How can whoever comes after Shepard even begin to live up to their accomplishments? How can players get behind a new person in the same way we got behind Shepard? And the biggest question of all, can someone else besides Shepard save the galaxy? I think this exact question is what Mass Effect 5 is setting up to answer. All these repetitive storylines that were solved by Shepard before are happening again. But we're also seeing new events and new outcomes unrelated to Shepard too. So to me, this is setting up Mass Effect 5 as a sequel to everything that's come before, and also showing hints of what's to come after. Shepard's return is undoubtedly linked to this pattern, and I believe that our commander will also be the one to break it. You can't change the repetitive nature of history, since lessons from the past are never learned, resulting in new problems time after time. but you can change who solves those problems, which is exactly what I think the franchise-altering plan for our commander is. Shepard's new role in Mass Effect 5 will likely involve saving the galaxy again, but at the same time, to hand off that role to someone else. Essentially, Shepard themselves, as Mass Effect 5's protagonist, will probably decide who'll take over Step 2 by the end of the game. And I think how this will happen is through the plotline of our returning Shepard versus the evil Shepard. Since Mass Effect has already done a Shepard v Shepard plotline, it's incredibly fishy for them to be doing one again, which is why I think this plot is for two specific purposes, which Shepard didn't learn during the clone incident. The first purpose is likely to jolt our Shepard into realizing that this repetitive historical pattern exists, making them want to prevent it from happening again. And the second purpose is likely for Shepard to learn more about Cerberus, and most especially, how they can survive even when their leadership dies. And the secret to Cerberus's unkillable nature was first shown in the Mass Effect comic Evolution. During Cerberus's inception, the Elusive Man created a set of rules that would define how the organization would operate from that point onward. And that rule set included these three things. We will watch the dark places and bring illumination. There is no magic, only technology, tools that we can master, tools that we must master for the betterment of mankind. And finally, we can and will take our rightful place in the stars. This was the Elusive Man's manifesto. And from that moment onward, Cerberus hasn't deviated. Throughout the trilogy, Cerberus watched the dark places and discovered that human colonists were being taken. They relied on new forms of technology more than any other group, even creating a project that could bring someone back from the dead. And now in Mass Effect 5, they're showing signs of building a new relay through the Alliance, likely to take their rightful place in the stars. Even without their original leaders, Cerberus continues to follow the Elusive Man's manifesto, which is exactly what Shepard and Mass Effect needs to replicate in Mass Effect 5. Cerberus can't keep using Shepard like they're a symbol for their values and manifesto. Our commander needs to come back one last time to firmly take a stand for what they believe in. Shepard needs to create their own manifesto that lives beyond them. They need to list out what they stand for so that others can follow in their footsteps. And this, more than anything, will allow for other protagonists to exist beyond them, even if Shepard does return in Mass Effect 5. Mass Effect's sustainable future can be a handoff of Shepard's manifesto from one person to the next, creating a new ideology that defines what Mass Effect is. And this can only happen if Shepard themselves return to create that ideology. That, more than anything, is why I believe we keep seeing plots that require Shepard's return. How can Shepard teach the galaxy to save themselves? When will the iconic commander finally be able to hand off the mantle of Peacekeeper to someone else? Mass Effect 5 likely holds the answer, and I can't wait to see what our Shepard does in what's likely the final chapter of their story. As to what that final chapter holds, there's been plenty of hints that it'll include a first contact war, and most importantly, the decisions that each race will face in the war ahead. Watch this video next to discover how the Destroy ending has already impacted each race's decisions, which will affect who will and won't survive in Mass Effect 5. See you there.
Logging you out, P7.